Hello again, Fantasy Alarm Nation. Justin Fensterman here, and it's episode 7 of Fantasy Football ADP TV. Heading into the 2023 fantasy football season, let's talk about some of the players who are trending up and others who are trending down when it comes to their average draft position. Let's get right down to business and talk about players that you're targeting or not in your fantasy football drafts. First, for a few players trending up, let's start with Diontae Johnson. We get it. Johnson didn't hit the end zone in the 2022 fantasy football season, but Kenny Pickett played in 13 games, and he certainly has more reps coming into this year. In PPR, Johnson still ended up as a top 30 receiver in total points in leagues that give 6 points per touchdown reception, which is very impressive. We should see Pickett have more games in which he throws at least 30 passes, thus that should help Johnson. Johnson had the 6th most targets of any wide receiver last year. Johnson also had 16 red zone targets in 2022, putting him in the top 15 at the position. He's currently being drafted outside the top 30 wide receivers on the FFPC, and being that you could grab him late in the 6th round and even early in the 7th makes him intriguing, and he should have more success as we should see growth from Pickett this year. He's had no fewer than 144 targets in each of his last 3 seasons. Also on the rise, Javonte Williams. The Broncos' offensive line comes into the season healthier and deeper, and even though Williams is coming off a torn ACL, all reports we've seen indicate that he won't miss any regular season games, and we could even see him appear in the preseason. Williams is a thick running back who had over 200 carries in his rookie season and showed his ability to catch passes. Williams secured 43 receptions in his rookie campaign and then averaged 4 receptions per game in the 4 games we saw him last season. On the ground, Williams averaged nearly 4.5 yards per carry in 2021 and nearly matched that in a few games in 2022 before getting injured. Is it risky drafting a player coming off a major injury? Yes. Should you be looking to overdraft Samaje Perine a bit so you can hedge and handcuff this backfield? Absolutely. We've seen Williams get drafted in the 6th and 7th rounds consistently over the last month, and his stock should continue rising with the more positive reports we see out of camp. Draft a couple of other running backs earlier in your drafts, and that will make Williams worth the draft capital as your 3rd or 4th running back on your fantasy football teams. Now for a couple of players trending down. Let's start with David Montgomery. We're starting to see Montgomery slide off draft boards a bit because rookie Jahmyr Gibbs can do exactly what Montgomery does. Montgomery might be the bigger back, but if the Lions are planning on throwing to their running backs, they'll prioritize Gibbs in the passing attack. Montgomery didn't have a lot of long breakaway runs last season, and even with more protection in front of him in Detroit, Montgomery could be utilized sparingly. It isn't a lock that he averages 12 to 15 carries per game in 2023. He's averaged fewer than 4 yards per carry for his career, and he's coming off a career low in touchdowns. Reports out of Detroit say both Gibbs and Montgomery will be fed in this offense, and early on the offense could favor the running backs because of personnel issues, especially with suspensions involved in Detroit. But by midseason, it wouldn't be surprising to see Detroit commit to one of these running backs and give the majority of snaps and touches to Gibbs. If you're planning on drafting the Detroit backfield, make sure it's in your plans to overdraft Montgomery so you can get both Gibbs and Montgomery on your team. But I don't see Montgomery having consistent standalone value, even though both Gibbs and Montgomery will be utilized in this offense. Also starting to drop a bit, Antonio Gibson. Unlike the Lions, the Commanders come into this season with a worse offensive line than last year. And even though we have to take into account that Brian Robinson was a little behind the 8 ball because he got shot and had to miss the first 5 weeks of the season, both running backs weren't that impressive last year, and Gibson's yards per carry have gone down throughout his 3-year career. Gibson was a receiver in college, and new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy could throw him a few more passes, but let's not forget that Washington isn't short on pass-catching weapons, and Robinson should still get more carries than Gibson overall. Gibson saw fewer than 10 carries in each of his final 4 games. Width-wise, Robinson is the bigger back and had more success than Gibson running the football. Even if Gibson gets prioritized a bit more in the passing attack, he has a lot of competition for targets and won't be prioritized in the backfield, that we know, and neither running back has enough protection in front of them to do some serious damage fantasy-wise. Paths to success and production aren't clear for Gibson once again. And that is another episode of ADP TV, FA Nation. We're taking this average draft position data from the FFPC. Our friends over there offer this great promotion where if you haven't played in the FFPC yet, you can get $25 off your first FFPC entry of $35 or more when you register here at this link using promo code ALARM, ALARM. Keep it strong. Keep reading the Living Draft Guide as we at fantasyalarm.com are here to help you dominate your fantasy football drafts and auctions. Good luck.